Hello and welcome to the Slow the Fuck Down podcast with Glow London and The Drum. I'm Emma Harris, Chief of Glow London and founder of the Slow the Fuck Down movement. In May 22, I had a completely out of the blue cardiac arrest and the odds of 96-4 surviving unscathed. Since then, I've been committed to sharing the perspective I'm now blessed with, that many of us are wasting the precious time we have on this planet with unsustainable pace and stress. In a world that's only getting faster, we're here to remind you that slowing down isn't just good for your health. It's about creating the right focus, making the right choices, and most importantly, achieving the life you want both in and out of work. In each episode, I'll welcome some fabulous guests onto the show to share their stories of how slowing down or not has affected their lives, their teams, and their businesses. Let's get started. Joining us today, we have Abby Dixon and Dino Myers-Lamptey. Abby, founder of The Whole Marketeer, an award-winning consultant, author, coach and all-round powerhouse, has over 20 years of experience driving growth for brands and businesses. She's now on a mission to support the humans behind the brands. With writing, training and podcasts, she helps marketeers lead more fulfilled, balanced and sustainable careers. She's not afraid to talk about the tough stuff either, like burnout and the pressure to constantly perform. She's a recent Campaign 40 over 40 honoree and a Marketing Week columnist. She's bringing head, heart and humanity back to marketing. Joining Abby, we have Dino Myers-Lamptey, the founder of The Barbershop, a strategy-led creative agency helping brands like Sky, Triumph, BFI and ExpressVPN solve big problems with bold, purpose-driven ideas. Dino's a board member of the UK FEs and the Marketing Society, a trustee at Brixton Finishing School and a non-exec at MGOMD. I don't know how he has time for all this. He co-founded MIFA to drive diversity in media and recently launched a marketing masterclass for startup brands. Named a top 10 media planner by Campaign 7 years running and on their 2025 A-list, Dino's known for running strategy into culture, shaping creativity. Abby and Dino, welcome. Very happy to have you here. Thank you both for taking the time. Thank you for slowing the fuck down.
Thank you for having us.
To be here today. I will start with the question I always ask my guests at the beginning, which is, how do you think we've got here? And whereby here, I mean the madness with which our industry is in, where most people I speak to are sort of drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of stress. We talked recently, Abby, about the fact that it's like, nearly 1 in 2 marketeers are thinking about leaving the industry. How do you think we've got here? Abby, can I ask you first?
You can, and I think it's multifaceted. And in fact, you and I have spoken offline about the fact it's not a finger-pointing exercise about the industry or the person. It's a combined impact that's happened, and it comes from many things. It comes from many things. First thing is, it comes from the brilliance that is marketing is being acknowledged as being the function that leads the commercial agenda, which is great. We've been knocking on that door for ages. And that shift from being the support function to one that's leading the commercial agenda has resulted in an increase in accountability, which is great. But it's also meant that we've got bigger roles, greater depth of roles, greater breadth of roles. And as a result, we haven't necessarily had the resource that has gone with that increased accountability and responsibility. I think with that, we are also working in a profession that is forever changing. So latest thinking, approaches, being able to think about what is going on, the latest trend, whether that's technological advancement or the latest scientific approach, bringing that into our folds as like an external pressure of knowing the latest thinking. The role itself, as we've moved from a support function to one leading, means that we are having to take more of a leadership role, which means that emotional piece, Pete Markey once said, the role of a marketer is part politician, part scientist, part storyteller. And that emotion of being the constant storyteller, getting everyone galvanized behind the plan, the thing that you're bringing to market, everyone aligned to it. I think that combined with the fact that we aren't slowing down and prioritizing, with the resource that we do have for the things that we need to do, I think that is definitely something that's happening in the industry as a whole.
Interesting you say about the leadership position, because a lot of the people we're working with that's kind of become the opposite. I think you're right. Marketing is everything because we're always on our phones, right? So everyone's constantly consuming. So marketing should be leading the agenda. Dino, do you think it is? Because I feel like everyone that's got a phone that's got Instagram on it thinks they're a marketeer. I was with someone recently who is a chief commercial officer, and he said no one else in the boardroom gets a hard time like the CMO. You know, HR don't get questioned, finance don't get questioned, marketing walks in and everyone's got an opinion. So I think I agree with you. The breadth is massive. We should be leading the agenda, but do you think we are?
Well, I think to add to how we've got here, we've got here because we're a relatively immature industry in terms of it's existed in this current form, quite recently, and it hasn't really matured into a stable form. And that's because of, the way agencies were formed, the way agencies once were, advertising was once done by the media owner, and then it was done by agencies, and then it was split out in terms of media and creative and PR and all the different bits. Plus, add to the fact that technology has come into the equation and it's just exploded the distribution channels and the things that people are consuming. And add that to the fact that it's the exciting part of the job, isn't it? Everyone wants to kind of likes the ideas, likes the bit that that they can get involved in, that uses a bit of imagination. Lots of people haven't ever been good enough to do it, but when it's available to them, then they've got an opinion on it. And I think that's the problem that marketers have had. Everyone's suddenly got really interested in it. And data and technology has made it much, much easier to have an opinion or to see what's out there and see competition doing things and whatever else. And everyone's got an opinion. And everyone secretly knows that it does make a difference. But we're going through an economics world where different things can be pulled, different levers can be used. And depending on the type of business, yes, you can get away with less marketing in certain models, but when you're a brand-led organization, it's absolutely essential. And I think that some people who move around from different organizations probably sometimes forget how important it really is. And they might be in a role that's, whether it's a finance or whether it's an operations role, and they just, their role is really important, but they just forget how important the marketing is to that business, which for most consumer-facing businesses, it is the difference, it is the thing. Certainly if you want to get to a certain size and scale.
I think that data and technology piece is so interesting, isn't it? Because the fact that it's so easily trackable, easily measurable, but not all of it. So because people outside of marketing get fixated. Well, that worked last Wednesday. Let's just do that again. I think you're absolutely right, Abby. We don't have the resources. Vic Fox was a guest on the podcast. She was talking about how the issue is that a lot of CMOs are really good at the how. They're really good at the what. Really good at the create. Well, that's what we were taught to do. Great at the creative, great at the media, but we don't understand the operating model because we weren't brought up to do that. So it requires a different type of resource, different type of know-how, and it's changing a million miles an hour. So as soon as you got to grips with one bit of tech, there's another one that comes in. It's pretty relentless. How are you doing amongst the madness, Abby? How are you personally doing?
I'm doing well amongst the madness because I've taken the time to build my own personal understanding. And I know that's one thing that we're going to talk about, but, we only ever have a finite amount of energy ourselves. And it's really important that we know ourselves, what drives us, what motivates us. We're really clear on our goals, what we're working towards, and setting boundaries around those things. So, I only have a finite amount of energy, and as a woman going through the change, my energy is even less. So actually, how do I make sure that I prioritize the things that I am doing to help others in that position? And I think to what you were saying around the technology and data, that's definitely one part of it, but I also think the way in which we do marketing is different. So not just the kind of leadership approach, but the pace. So if you think about how we used to sit and say, right, this is our long-term strategic plan. This is our calendar for the year. These are our key campaigns. This is what we're rolling out, and we'd all be aligned against that plan. We're now working with channels and technology that requires us to be reactive, responsive. To your point, looking at the data points and how it's performing. And so we are always on. We're always on and needing to be always on in our roles. And then the work that we're putting out there needs to be reactive and always on to make sure we are culturally relevant, or we're talking as part of the social dialogue, making sure our brands are part of that. And so, if you think about, when are you free for us to catch up? We used to say, well, let me get strat planning out the way and then I'll be all right for a couple of months. That's not the case anymore. So the way in which we deliver and bring things to market as well has massively changed and adding extra stress.
Yeah. Do you think it's just marketing, though? So listening to you, that makes sense. But thinking about some of my friends that are not in marketing, some of my friends that are teachers, some of my friends who are journalists, they seem to be experiencing the same thing. Any thoughts on what's going on there?
I mean, I'd say that the driving force is consumerism, right? And the explosion of social media and information and technology on that side, how that's just changed our expectations of what to expect about anything. The secret to kind of life and happiness is that kind of expectation reality gap, right? And you're never more than a flick or a scroll or click or whatever away from seeing a world of something that you can't have and you think that you should have. And you just don't see losers anymore, right? You just don't meet them anymore. So everyone's perfect, everyone's great, everyone's wonderful, and your campaign in the marketing can be that much better, right? You can do that much more. There's always a channel, a thing that you haven't done, and same in the teaching world, I guess, right? There's someone probably broadcasting how good their teaching is, or this thing to learn, and this technique, or whatever it is. So just this inundation, being overburdened with too much information and too much choice, the abundance of choice, and then therefore having this kind of gap of feeling that you're not really fulfilling whatever it is you need to be fulfilled.
So true.
So I think that's part of it. That's why everyone's kind of, probably the biggest kind of difficulty that most people settle with is the uncertainty, not being able to kind of imagine, what 6 months is going to be like, or a year, or whatever else. And I think that it's a hard thing for anyone to do, but the more you do it, the more you get kind of comfortable with knowing that it will be okay, and it is okay, and that's the kind of the way things are. And probably to some degree, if you're in a job like you are a teacher or a doctor, a stable job, let's say, then, and you start to go through this kind of new geo-economical, political world that we're in, where there and AI and technology, where there are some real fundamental questions about institutions and things like that, then you probably feel the worry a lot more. You probably see, because you haven't had this kind of been thrown in, every other year, having to potentially retrain or do something different or learn something new. So to some degree, their industries are probably affected less, but they're probably worrying about it more.
I don't know. I think you're right. I think it's more the personal sort of, that sense that there's this overload of information. I thank God for those videos where you watch people falling down the stairs all the time, because it's like, you get a sense of, it's not always perfect. You do need that, although that doom scrolling. I heard someone say the other day, I don't know if you've heard of 4,000 Weeks.
Yes.
4,000 Weeks. I don't know. God, I can't remember his name. Something Oliver Wyman, is it? And he talks about the fact that every time you're on your phone, imagine there's 1,000 people keeping you on that scrolling, and that really scares. So I often sort of throw the phone down, and there's 1,000 people calling me on it. What you're talking about, I think, something we talk a lot about is controlling the controllables. Is what actually can we affect? Because that sense of overwhelm, that sense of I'm not good enough, that sense of there's always better out there. Something we talk a lot about is what are the bits you can control. We can't control the wars. We can't control the mad political environment we're in. We can't control what government choices are economically. What can we control? I can be the best mum. I can be the best friend, the best boss, the best colleague, the best author, the best podcast presenter, whatever it is. That's the bit we need to focus on. And we draw a diagram which has got controllables, things you can control, and things that matter. And it's about finding the bit that sits in the middle of that. And that's quite hard sometimes. Once you get in there, stay in there. But how are you doing, Dino?
Yeah, I'd say I'm good. I mean, I'd say that there's a lot going on. So there's always a lot to think about. And but I think that, from a very early stage, I've been in jobs and roles where there's been kind of change at the heart of it, being, more of a strategic kind of mind that, whatever fitted into a silo because of the industry. But if it wasn't for the industry, would call myself lots of other things as well. That meant that, I took those kind of change and movements early and was kind of comfortable with that kind of uncomfortable situation through various places I've worked and people I've worked with and all sorts. And I think you get this kind of sense of confidence when you meet more and more senior people that also haven't got a clue what's going on. and just still manage to get through. I mean, winging it, is a bit disingenuous because they've got a lot of talent and skill in terms of the fundamental things that really matter in terms of relationships, understanding, trust, and those kind of things that stay steady. Those are the things that you end up going, well, these are almost like the most important things. But actually, the things on top of that, which are like the day-to-day of how to do the job and whatever else, keeps on changing and evolving. And right now, we're in a particular point in time where no one knows, right? No one really knows. Everyone is kind of experimenting with different things. And, and just like all good experiments, things fail and some things succeed, but you don't really know until you look back at it in probably a few years' time as to whether the right choices were made. So, I mean, I think that if you look at it from a really kind of competitive sense, I mean, the business that I'm in and how we work, it's a bit of a problem solving one. So to some degree, when there's kind of more problems and people are asking more questions, you kind of stay a bit more relevant, and you're like, right, okay, where's a problem I need to fix? However, it's been going on for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's the new norm, isn't it? I mean, we talk about post-traumatic stress from COVID, that we know now there is no certain, no one saw that coming, and now we never know what's lying ahead. And in a way, that's really sort of shifted something in society. I sometimes sort of see a picture from before COVID and think, that's when we knew what the world was about. And now that plus the technological changes, it all feels very unsteady. And I do think that's what can create this sort of sense of uncertainty. Abby, you jumped out of the corporate world to your own thing, and work with marketing capabilities and help marketeers rather than be one. What led to that choice?
So what made me leave the corporate world? I don't think it was necessarily a case of like, I'm going to leave the corporate world, but more a combination of three things, which was becoming a mum and knowing that my son was getting to the age where school gates were going to be a thing, and I wanted to be there more. And as someone, it was quite a journey to become a mum, so really want to be there to enjoy as much as of those moments as I can. There was a acknowledgement, or almost like an unfulfillment in me, which was like, so what's next? So what's next that allows me to, having, spent time with a coach, having defined what my strengths are and what I'm really passionate about and what my values are, all of those things culminated to who I wanted to help and how I wanted to help them and how I could help them with all of my skills. So it was a life moment coupled with that kind of personal understanding, and I want to do something different.
It's so important to do that, and so rare that people do that, and it's scary. I did it too, and you sort of jump and hope the net will catch you. Something I always talk about is, if you enjoy what you do, if you're living your purpose, which we both are,
100%.
I'm sure you are as well, it doesn't feel work, you don't get that Sunday night feeling. It's that sense that, was the saying, I always forget what it is, but it's something like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And it's so true, that, when you make those choices, when you find your purpose, follow it, because all the way the unconscious mind works, it will work. I'm having these conversations a lot at the moment. Talking about young people and the next generation, Dino, this is obviously a big, big passion of yours. From MIFA to Brixton Finishing School, this is obviously something you're investing a lot. I don't know where you find the time, because you're also a dad. What role does slowing down have in bringing on that next generation? A lot of mentoring, listening, reflecting, and bringing in that real inclusion rather than just the pace of simple progress.
Well, I think that the first thing is, it is a bit intersectional in a sense. So, it's disproportionately affected by minority groups, for instance. Right from the start, when you get a job when you're 18, 20, 21 years old or whatever else, particularly in our industry, we're an industry that kind of almost abuses your time a bit, and just kind of expects you to kind of give every hour of the day and turn up and get paid very little, live in a high cost of living place like London, and just kind of get on with it and prove that you can. And maybe if you go back, 20 odd years ago, you could just about do it. Now it's just impossible. But when you look at certain groups, when they've got extra responsibilities, and some people with like care and responsibilities, and still studying, or just the low income where they've probably even got a second job to have to hold down that creative job, it just doesn't become possible. And so the thing that gets you through it is, in our industry, is nepotism, let's call it, right? So knowing someone that says, okay, stick with it, it's okay, in the end you could be like me, right? Stick with it and it all gets good. This is just the crap part and it gets good. I kind of had that in a way of just through advice when I started my career, because I remember I started my career at a good time, let's say. I mean, in terms of, it was the heyday of media, in a sense of, magazines launching every 5 minutes and newspapers and all sorts. So
did you go to uni?
Yeah, I went to Sheffield University. Yeah, so I went to Sheffield and I did a year at Sheffield, being like a sports officer role, and then came into the world of work, and I got there, and it was like the entertainment and the experience and the buzz of it all was enough to keep you going at that stage, and enough to supplement your income. It was like, right, I'm going out tonight to have dinner on, on this magazine, right? And you go to all the nicest places and whatever else. But that quickly kind of ended, I guess. And what it meant is people just coming to work and doing the shift and not having those extra kind of perks and whatever else. And then the reality becomes much harder unless you've got that person advising you that no, stick with it because this gets better. This is just the early stages of learning and doing the difficult part, but it gets better and it becomes a career that you can afford to be in. The comparison, and what you've got to put down is the comparison is a more stable job that has more guarantees about your income and in how you progress, particularly if you come from a minority family where people know about accountancy, law, medicine, all the classics, right? But there's a reason for the classics. The reason for the classics is because if you get a qualification, you get a certain reward for it. It's harder for someone to discriminate against your qualifications in those roles. You are what you are because the paper says you are. When you enter an industry like ourselves, where it's like you've got no qualification, just your experience and what you say and whether someone backs you or not. You're in this world of not knowing where you're going to be in 5-10 years time. So you have to kind of have someone that you trust to, that can mentor you and say, yes, this is how it works, right? It's like this for all of us or whatever. Or actually, no, you are getting treated incorrectly, or you do need to move, things like that. Those kind of bits of advice are really important. And just not having the family, friends and whatever relationships in the industry to start off with is a huge, huge disadvantage. It's a massive disadvantage. Yeah. And since I came into the industry, my sister, who studied politics and politics at university, she came in the industry afterwards. My cousin, who studied something completely different, she came in the industry afterwards. Yeah, and but it's just not by kind of telling them to come in, but because I guess they had someone that they could see, and when actually it's quite a good career, it's quite a good job. So that's what mentorship does. It kind of gives you that kind of to be it, you have to see it as well, that kind of thing, knowing that there's a path, knowing that there isn't this ceiling that you get to and then suddenly all your time and effort is ruined and all your expertise is wasted because someone says no.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you encourage those young people when they're starting out and having to deal with all the disadvantages? How do you encourage them to look after themselves as part of that sort of mentoring process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one as well, because when you're young, that's when you've got your energy, right? And you've got to use your asset, which is your energy. And you've got energy and time. I mean, if you're fortunate enough, and a memory.
Energy, time and a memory.
Yeah. Better balance, better skin, better health. Yeah. But no, I mean, you've got to take what you've got. And of course, we've talked about people that are in situations that they are constrained by their situation. But outside of that, you've got more time than you think. You've got more ability to jump into new things than you think. Less kind of responsibility. You haven't got kids and you haven't got, mortgages and things that you're probably paid for. So you can kind of turn this into a bit of an advantage. And really that advantage is just to throw yourself in to learn stuff, because that is the point of time where you kind of put the hard yards in that you will value later on when you haven't got the time to do it. And then you put yourself through that situation where you can learn things, you can kind of like deal with the lows and come out of it in a sense. So while the advice is about doing things in balance, and it's also putting things in perspective, that actually you are at a time period where you're young, so you've got the energy to be able to push through this, and it's important that it's happening now to set the foundations for you rather than later. A lot of the time, when people there's another thing that doesn't sound like good advice. I mean, we should probably celebrate sometimes bad advice, right? Which is about the ability to forget and ability just to kind of get on, which is a bit of resilience, which, sometimes I think people can dwell on things too much and it can crush them, right? They can get some bad feedback or whatever else, and or something that's just delivered in a bad way and treated unfairly, exactly. And then they can internalize it and just let it eat them up and then just stop them from doing everything. The worst thing in the world is when you lose your confidence and you don't believe you can do something. The best thing to do is I mean, I what someone once told me, always have a healthy disrespect for your bosses, in the nicest possible way, kind of know that, right, you're aspiring to be them, but also you could be better than them, don't kind of just kind of pander to whatever's going on in a sense. And particularly in the world that we're in with technology and the ability to learn on your own and all the rest of it, the first thing is not to expect the job to give you everything. Expect kind of everything else to be what you go about to do to shape your career, and understand that you're in much more control over your career and your destiny than anyone else is. Particularly now, right? In the world of creators, influencers, this, that, whatever else, it's like you can go and write a paper about this thing. You can go and write a blog about that, whatever. You can go and investigate whether this is better than that and have an opinion on it. And so giving them the belief that that's how it happens, right? And someone doesn't come along and give you that opportunity. It happens by someone going, right, I'm going to be the expert at this, or I care about this, I'm going to do it. But it does take time. But you have the time.
Yes.
Now you have the time.
Yes, you won't have the time one day.
Yes.
You're so right. Something we talk about in Slow the Fuck Down is the belief. Belief drives feelings, drives behaviours, drives outcome. And certainly with the Marketing Academy Foundation, that whole confidence piece is just so important. I say that to my kids about their teachers. Like, have an healthy disrespect for them, but do play the game. Don't get told off. But know, you know,
respect, but know that,
that they're not, you know, and but having said that, play the game, because at the end of the day, they're in authority. But it's a really interesting balance, isn't it? Abby, you talk a lot about building fulfilling careers, but fulfillment often needs the space, the reflection, the slowness in this pace where marketeers are under all this pressure. How do you help the people that you work with create that right pace?
So I think there is it the right pace or making space?
Right.
And so I think it is about how you get off the wheel to think about truly what it is that you want. And in fact, I was running a workshop on how to have, you know, a fulfilling career this morning. And, you know, in that, it's very much around how do we know what we're great at and what we bring to the world, so that if you know that, then you build your confidence. And less comparisonitis, less imposter syndrome. How do you get really clear on the things that you are great at and that you enjoy? So they give you energy. Every time you do them, you get a dopamine hit. How do you get really clear on your values and your purpose and what you deem of high importance? How do you get really clear on what it is that you have been breadcrumbing, as I call it? So all those things where you're saying, go off, go explore, try it now's the time. I would say always breadcrumbing, like, what was that thing that they were talking about? That's quite interesting to me. What's that? And almost like then use that to go, so what is the ideal role for me? You know, we have to have things in our role that allow us to play to our strengths. We have to have areas of development because we need to evolve, not just because our industry is evolving, but because evolution allows us to grow and develop. And we need to be able to do things that play to our values, our purpose, and make sure it lives in our life as a whole. So that's the thing that allows us to, all of those things together, to define the ideal role, to make sure that we are proactively and intentionally making sure our careers are happening for us, not to us. And to do that, we do need to slow down. We do need to make space, but we need to make sure that we constantly build our understanding. If I didn't like that project, why didn't I like the project? Was it the people? Was it the task? Was it what it included? Was it what I end up having to do? Okay, didn't enjoy that. What's my learning for next time? So you're constantly, it's never the learning, it's always the reflection on the learning. And so for me, fulfillment comes from doing two things. One, when you do something that plays to your values, and two, when you do something that edges you closer to your goals. So I'm a massive, know your values, know your goals, know where you're heading. And, knowing your goals and being future focused also helps with resilience, what you mentioned earlier. So if you know where you're heading, then living in the here and now is much more bearable. Because you're going, well, this is just the thing that I'm dealing with now. Actually, where I'm heading to in the future, this is all part of the journey. But if you don't know where you're heading to, the pain of here and now feels a lot deeper. So it is about slowing down. It is about making space, but it's also about having that constant reflection of self. And, not getting wrapped up in other people's definition of success. I think there's many different ways that people approach their career. There's those that know clearly what they want and they're going for it. There's those that don't know what they want and they're being guided by others, and very much those that have gone before them or their line manager at the time kind of telling them what to do next. And then there's those that are like, I don't know either of those things. Maybe they don't have the guidance or the understanding. So wherever you are on that kind of spectrum of thought, it is all about what do you know about yourself and what do you need and what do you want, and not the definition of success that somebody else has set for you or that you've seen that you think that you need to achieve. I work with a lot of senior marketers, and I will tell you now that a lot of those senior marketers, sometimes when they actually do look at what their role involves, they don't enjoy it. It's not as fulfilling as they thought it was going to be. And I know a lot of people that are kind of going, actually, I want to go back to doing more of the delivery or spending more time with the insight or working with a slightly smaller team, because actually my seniority of my role means I spend time in board meetings, not with my team, not with the doing, not doing the things that I enjoy. And that takes time and acknowledgement and acceptance of kind of where you've got to as well. So it's not always that kind of forward trajectory. It's always sometimes looking back and reflecting to make sure that at all times your role includes all of those things.
Yes, I mean, I'm hearing own your shit, which I think is, and know yourself, which is such an important thing. I'm so amazed how often the leadership teams we work with, they've got people underneath. They're like birds with their mouths open. What next? What's next for my career? And the leaders are like, I've got this pressure. And often those engagement scores suffer because people are like, where's my career going? And I'm all saying to the leaders, you've got to push it back to them. Yeah. No one's going to be more interested than you in your own career. So spend time working out what you're good at, what's important. It's so true. No one's going to be more interested in your promotion than you are. Make it happen. I also love that comparison paranoia, I think is what Sophie Devonshire calls it. And I'm always telling her stop because she's amazing. But with that social media thing, it's worse than ever. I've got it over your podcast. You know, you say, oh God, you know, there are some of our mates that post on LinkedIn like every day, and you think, oh God, I haven't posted, and everyone thinks I'm rubbish. It's just about calming that noise. So you were saying about being clear where you are right now, and that thing I talk a lot about, which is we live in the past or the future. Get present. Get really present. Where am I now? What is it I want? I'm taking ownership of that. Absolutely love that. And I'm stealing breadcrumbing.
Yeah.
Never heard that.
I was going to make a comment as well about there's a thing about people kind of learning to love the job by learning to love the kind of the training and the development to become great at something. You know, there's so many things I think that you don't really enjoy until you become really good at it or whatever else. But it's just that, I mean, I heard this kind of quote about like elite sports people, and the difference is they kind of turned the training into something that they kind of began to love the training. And that was what was necessary to kind of make them perform at the highest level and enjoy, they weren't really just looking forward to the performance, right? It was just that the training part was the bit they were like, I love to train because I know it's going to lead to a great performance. And really, the kind of at the start of it, no one really loves to train as hard as these elite people do train. But you've got to kind of reframe in your mind that that's the thing that makes you kind of great. And I think that the other kind of point I would say is what enough people don't do, I don't think, is find out the thing that's really valuable to the business and try and be good at the thing that's really valuable to the business. We work in organizations that sometimes make it hard to work out really where's the value, right? What's the thing that really matters? And we almost kind of create, and this is part of the technology problem, sometimes we create all sorts of tasks that are not necessarily significant. But the quicker you can work out, right, how does the money kind of made and how does this work and what does the business really, really need you to do and want you to do? And then you can try and kind of work yourself into a position or something that's really contributing to that. Then I think you'll get that feedback as well, and you'll see and find yourself being much more useful and feel much more purpose in what you're doing, and much more value in your career. Full stop. Once you work out the mechanics of what makes value.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, you are someone who imparts knowledge a lot of the time, do you know? I don't know, honestly, how you squeeze it all in. Knowing also you're a very active dad with lots of activities and camping and all sorts. Your masterclasses that you run for startup founders, how do you get them to understand that focus, the need for growth, and not kill themselves?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first thing about the masterclass is very much the nature of the masterclass is realizing that a lot of founders don't understand marketing and kind of rush ahead. They often prioritize things like finance and of course product development, and they just forget about marketing. And then it's a thing they think about as a bit of an afterthought. And really the best business in the world are embedded in kind of branding and marketing right from the start. I think that the best founders in the world are natural born marketers, right? They get it, and right from the start they get it. And sometimes you get these companies where they go, oh, we've never done a marketing in our life. But you look at it and you go, that's because you've been doing it from day one, right? You just haven't noticed, you kind of do it. You haven't created a department for it, but everyone is doing it and you understand it. And so I think that the thing about, startup founders and prioritizing marketing, firstly, the masterclass is to try and simplify it, right? Because marketing can be over complex. and with people coming at, salespeople coming at them with all sorts of different propositions about what you can do and 1,000 things. And ultimately what we've got is the benefit of having worked with 1,000 different clients and seeing 1,000 different scenarios of what works and, what life stages, B2B versus B2C, all the different things. And to be able to say, right, these are the things that you need to get right to know you're in the right path. This is like where not to waste your time, and this is where to focus on. So we're essentially kind of giving a bit of a hack to kind of, get more things right, which is a time saver. But also it's a money saver, because if they ever engage with someone who wants to do their marketing, they kind of know the questions to ask and the way to judge what's good and, and what's bad. So I think that in terms of the thing that we would say to most people, what we would say to people is, firstly, clue yourself up on the fundamentals so you know what you're looking for and what good looks like. And then don't kind of get yourself too distracted by what is a specialist thing, but understand the kind of expertise that you need to do those things that you've been taught are important to do. And of course, in this day and age, we're adapting, because we found ourselves talking about AI in different elements, but we're going to do a very AI focused marketing course as well, because yes, there are X amount of tasks that actually there's things that you can use now that can get you to good, let's say. And I'd always say, kind of, if you want humans to take you to great, but for a lot of businesses at the start, good is good enough, right? That's enough. As long as it saves time and it moves them, then that's a win.
So you're giving them sort of shortcuts, focus, don't get distracted. So in that sense, you are getting them to slow that down, and clarity, which, because there's a lot of noise, and it's saying, again, what are the things that matter? What are the things you control? Get in the middle of that.
And the other really important thing with founders is often founders are individuals. Sometimes they have a co-founder, whatever else. And they're quite a common thing with founders that are individuals is they just overthink things, and they just kind of don't know. Like they need a buddy, a bouncing, a spark, accountability, or someone to kind of bounce against and be a bit like, is this the right thinking? And you get a lot of that. So when we do the course, and it's in the questions and answers bit, where sometimes you deliver something, you just feel like this is pretty simple and fundamental, and they should know this, whatever else. And it's when the questions come back, you're like, oh my God, right, this is really interesting for them. This is really, and they haven't thought about this, and they haven't thought about it like this. And you realize how revealing and powerful it is, and how they could have just spent too much time thinking about the wrong thing, or money even, going down the wrrong path.
Wow, they probably need a bit to slow the fuck down, actually. Maybe we should buddy up.
Yeah.
Because also in that journey, that's overwhelming. As someone we've all launched our own businesses. It is the first couple of years. I mean, my cardiac arrest was, 2.5 years into launching the business properly. So I do think I remember now that quest I was on. From year 1 to 2, we trebled the turnover, and then we were on track to do, I think we did it again this year 2. Year 3, and then I had a cardiac arrest. Funny that. Now I can't even remember what I meant. I don't give a shit about the turnover. I want a happy team. I want enough money to live a nice life and to work with great people. I genuinely don't know what I meant. How times have changed. So Abby, we're coming to the end, but there is something I want to ask you, just as a mum. We're all parents here. Having a kid and launch your own business. I know there are lots of people listening who perhaps are thinking, I'd love to do exactly what you did. You said even it was at the time when you became a mum that you decided to jump out. How do you juggle? How do you do it all?
So, I've got a teenager now, and though his needs with any child over time always changing. So there was how do I want to show up as a parent? So, how many times do I want to be at the school gate? And look, we don't always get the quantity that we aspirationally want, but would I be at the school gate more and be there for the key events like sports day or arts day or whatever it may be? Yes. So that's really important. So I think there is a bit about what's really important for how I want to show up as a parent and what my child needs as well. And then I think there is the constant reviewing it, because I'm in a really tricky space at the moment where I've got a teenager who doesn't want me, but he needs me. And so, I'd block out Friday afternoon. He finishes school early in the afternoon. And, I'd be there like, right, let's go do something cool. This will be like, mummy and son time, or mum and son time, or bruh and son time. And he doesn't want me. He's got his own plans. He's got his thing that he wants to do. It really is ow. But what I do find is that they then need you later for something else. So I almost feel like I'm constantly making sure I've got reserves in place so that I can be there for those conversations that they want to have. But also not being afraid to ask for help. You know, as we say, it takes a village.
Yeah.
You know, making sure there is that community around you that can catch you when you have a demand that means that you can't be there. Have help, and you know, all of those people are going to add positively to your child's life. So don't feel like it's all on you. I think one of the benefits of working for myself is that, you know, I'm very intentionally go, right, I'm going to be around, you know, not work during the summer holidays, or at least a good chunk of the summer holidays and the other school breaks. But then are the other times, off I go. So yeah, it's about finding the balance that works for you and the priorities that work for you.
Yeah. And remember, it's good for him to see his mum being powerful. You know, one day he will, you know, possibly have a partner or have a daughter, and knowing that role modelling is really important. I think there's a lot of guilt involved in parenting. And remember, actually, what we're doing is we're teaching them that is okay. Because, yeah, I mean, I've got still an 8-year-old who would have me never leave the house. It was up to him. And I have to keep reminding him, this is okay. This is okay, because this is what mummy needs to do. But I'm always in your heart. But I make myself emotional. Thank you for sharing that. We're nearly out of time. It's gone so quickly. And we've got some brilliant stuff here, and a lot for people to, they probably have to listen to this twice, I think, because there's been such a richness of advice. But what's the one thing, a lot of people that will be listening to this will be, you know, in situations where they're drinking from a fire hose, finding it really difficult to slow down. What one thing would you like them to hear from you? Dino, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm really kind of overthinking, let's call it, which is what we advise people not to do. But I'm fascinated in overthinking in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like the re-understanding of like time, and I've got this kind of like you know, let's call it a pub chat, late night pub chat, where questions that, you know, you'd ask someone just to find out the different answers people will say, and you know, and they kind of like, you know, philosophical questions about things. And you know, one of those is just around the idea of, you know, you're on your deathbed, like what is the thing that people say, right? You know, what is the thing? And it's and most of the time I think it's a function of time. It's about more time, less time. I wish I had time to do this, whatever else. And because of that, I believe that time is really the currency. But it's like an inverse relationship right now. So like, for example, in work, we often, you know, scope out work and go, we're going to charge more because it's going to take more time. But shouldn't we be charging more because we can do it in less time and give you back time and give you time to do the things that you really, you know, really want to do and are important for you, rather than taking up your time to do this thing and drawing it out and stringing it out. And I think that it's a really interesting thing to think about how can we do the best we possibly can in the least possible time so we can have time for something else, right? So the opportunity cost of time. And I don't think we think about it enough. I think that people, you know, work, the way it works is people look to fill up their days with time with stuff and everything, rather than thinking about the alternatives for the use of time that could be better. And I think that the other thing that's attached to that is there was this thing that you know, one of my kids' school leavers book or whatever. My wife was like, oh, we've got to write a quote or something. So you know, I thought of something and I thought, okay, maybe a time-based thing. And the thing that I said, I think in it was, you know, enjoy the moment that you're in, because the past is a product of this, of you know, this moment is a product of the past, and this moment will determine your future. Which I think is quite a nice thought about the fact that now is what determines whether tomorrow is good or bad or whatever else. And that isn't, you know, something out of your control can happen, but the way you think about things, whatever's happened in your past, the way you think about that thing right now will determine how you think about it tomorrow. And you can choose to think about it differently or not, or you can choose to do something differently or not. That's within your power, whatever you decide and do in this particular moment. So don't overthink the past and don't overthink the future, because, you know, these are things that are largely either gone, that are past your control, or just haven't happened yet. And actually, whatever you're doing now in this moment is the thing that will determine what happens next, but would also determine what you thought about the things that have happened in the past.
Love that. It's the power of now. I don't know if you've read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. I mean, I'm both big fans, but yeah, we live most of our lives in the past. We cannot change or a future that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And that power of being right in the now and seeing the power in that.
And enjoy the moment, right?
Yeah.
Because the moment is the only thing that's really real, isn't it?
My 8-year-old's really decided suddenly, he's fascinated by the fact that this moment will never happen again. And he keeps telling me, Mum, do you realise this moment will never happen again? I love it. He's suddenly got existential. Abby, what's your one message to our listeners?
I would say listen to yourself. I think we run, as we've discussed today, at such a pace that our body may be giving us signs that we need to slow the fuck down and we're not listening. But also listen to what it's asking you or what you need. So, I have a set of non-negotiables that I set boundaries around. You can't set a boundary without knowing what the thing is that you need to protect. So be really clear on what you need to protect and what you need, but just listen. Your body will tell you what you need. It will tell you what you need to fill up your cup. And making sure that you set the boundaries around those is really important.
Brilliant. So true, because no one's going to do it for you. And the body does keep the score.
Doesn't it just?
Wow, thank you both. Honestly, I think that was a book that we just wrote, but it's been absolutely amazing. Abby and Dino, I absolutely love that. Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in, listening, and that has been Slow the Fuck Down. Thank you for listening to the Slow the Fuck Down podcast with Glow London and The Drum. If you found this episode interesting and insightful, please help us spread the word by giving us a follow or sharing it with your friends. And if you feel inclined to give us a quick review, that would be awesome. Let's all do what we can to help the world slow the fuck down.